Welcome back or welcome to Y Option. I'm your host, Yogi Roth. And you thought you were just going to get a normal Tuesday in the offseason in college football as spring ball begins pretty much everywhere around the country. Think again, huge news in college football as Stanford makes a change at the top as the head coach, Troy Taylor, is fired earlier today. Andrew Luck is the general manager of that program. When he took over as a GM towards the end of the 2024-25 season, we all knew that his role was to oversee the head coach. Amid reports and investigations that have come to light over the past couple of days, clearly there was decision time, whether it was pressure, whether they felt as though they had to make a move. Andrew Luck referenced that in his statement. When he looked at the holistic element of the program, he just felt as though there needed to be a change in leadership. So Andrew Luck makes that call. Troy Taylor is out. Also, there is no athletic director. Bernard Muir is no longer the AD there as well. So very unique times on the farm for Stanford. I want to start here. I want to start with number one, compassion and empathy for the staff that is there. Because while Troy Taylor got fired, and I'm sure his contract will protect him, I believe he got an extension a year ago after reportedly interviewing for the UCLA job. I don't know the contract status of his staff. So my first thought goes out to them and their families. So they're going to have to navigate this now. Horrible time to hire a head coach. Horrible time to go get a job if you're an assistant as well. So I always want to start with that. That's always a lens we're going to come with here at Y Option. Two, let's just talk about Stanford athletics for a second right now. It's just not what it once was. Clearly, when David Shaw left, they made a change. They brought in Troy Taylor, who was able to do more with less really everywhere he had been. Whether I met him when he was at Eastern Washington as an offensive coordinator, he was at Utah, really successful at Sacramento State. Clearly, it didn't transfer over to Stanford. Everybody knew it would be a rebuild. He knew it would be a rebuild. Thought it would take a couple years, but the model was get players that wanted to be there for 3 years at least, use and lean into the power of that degree, and then if they wanted to transfer, cool. And at the time, Stanford wasn't necessarily a player in the reality of college football. I'm talking about NIL, the transfer portal. It just wasn't anywhere near some of the other teams that have been playing in Rose Bowls over the last decade, much like Stanford had been under David Shaw. So now where do they go from here? How do they navigate this? I believe in this. This is not as bad of a job as I think people paint Stanford to be. I just think it's as bad of timing around trying to find a head coach as you can find. So how do you marry that up? So when I look at this thing, they have the resources. They have revenue sharing. They're positioned, I think, to do well in the future moving forward. They have Andrew Luck as their general manager. I mean, the guy has as much juice at that position as you could argue anybody in the country. And they have a model that's unique. I mean, go back, 10 years, 15 years, when Jim Harbaugh and David Shaw took over, the whole model there was go find the top 25 high school football players that are elite in football and also elite in the classroom, get them to the farm and go win. And that's what they did. They were the bully out west for a while. Now the landscape has shifted, but I still believe that for the purists in college football, I think there's a world. I talk to a lot of parents of recruits. Stanford is still a dream school. There still is a desire to go get that degree. So I still think the model of get players to come, be there for 3 years, get their degree. If they want to make a move after that, go for it. But I do think they're actually set up with whomever they hire to have, I believe, again, a sustainable model in the new world order of college athletics. Like, not only did they have to deal with NIL and the transfer portal and the concerns they had within it, they're also playing in the ACC on the other side of the country. Like, there's a lot that's gone on there in the last 3 years. You could go all the way back to COVID and navigating that in Northern California. So, in my opinion, my first call is Tavita Pritchard. He's a proud alum. He coached there for a long time in the Harbaugh and Shaw era. He's been in the NFL now with the Commanders, clearly had success there. When you look at what Jane Daniels has done as the quarterback at the Commanders, he's coaching that position. I'd imagine he's already in contact with officials at Stanford. Does he want to come back to college? Do they extend that offer to him? Andrew Luck, of course, knows Tavita extremely well from his time as a player there. All in all, a challenging day as spring ball should be celebrated around the country on the farm. They no longer have a head coach. The staff is in flux. The next decision I'd imagine will be made in the next 24 hours of, is there an interim head coach to navigate spring ball? Or do you wait and say, no, let's do what's going to happen in a year anyway with OTAs. Let's just push everything forward. Focus on academics right now. We'll start spring ball in May. Nobody's having a spring game anyway. That would be the recommendation that I would have. Get the right guy in. And I'll say this, my last point. I think there's a world you can say it's going to be so hard to find a head job or find a head coach. It is so hard to get a head coaching job. So if you're out there saying, God, who are they going to get? Who's going to come take this job? There's a lot of people that I'm sure would take this job because it's so hard to get a Power 4 job, especially at a place like Stanford. It recruits itself to a certain degree. As I referenced earlier, I think they have the resources, have a little bit of energy with Andrew Luck as their GM. You got to believe that he's going to make sure that they are up with the times in major college football, and they have a unique product to sell with the degree, the location, the history of what Stanford could be. So a really unfortunate day for that program, having to get rid of Troy Taylor, only 2 seasons, I believe 3 wins apiece, so never really hit the success I think we thought that he might get when he was hired. My heart goes out to the entirety of that staff that is having to navigate this right now, their families, their children in school, having to, I'm sure be asked about it. That's just how this thing goes. I've had these conversations with too many children of coaches to understand how hard and brutal it is. So a lot of love and empathy out to them. And then for Stanford moving forward, I think it's got a shot to be a really attractive place. And I know with Andrew Luck in charge, even though they don't have an AD, they'll figure that thing out. Football, I believe, will matter again in the way it needs to matter to really compete. And I think whether it's the new AD and the new head coach, you have a real cool opportunity to be aligned. And I'll say that every coach I talk to, and I say, hey, do you want to go be a head coach again? Marcus Arroyo just said it on our podcast earlier this week. Yeah, if there's great alignment, president, AD, GM, head coach, Stanford, there's a chance to reset. Got an awesome opportunity to do that. Cannot wait to track that. We'll cover all of that as it happens in real time. As always, if you want some information on college football from out here in LA, out here on the West Coast, we got you covered. Breaking news here with Stanford making a move on Troy Taylor, trying to find their next head coach.